We are nothing if professional here.
Okay.
You have a seat, you have a microphone, you have 3 people dedicated to being here. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello. Please, everybody, can I get a round of applause for Miss Tiffany for being here?
Oh, hello. There I am. Oh.
You have earned the applause just by sitting.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes.
I did that all by myself.
Yay. How's your day been so far?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Had a nice sleep.
Oh.
It's very good.
The microphone did not agree with you on that one. No.
Maybe it didn't have a nice sleep.
Well, microphones do tend to be a little bit cranky when they have not gotten their nap.
That's true.
Yes. And how many fans have you met today?
I was not counting them. I did not know there would be a pop quiz.
I thought that
Several.
Several. We'll go
Several.
with that. I will be opening this up to the audience. I believe there is one question.
Okay. We definitely have one question.
We definitely have one, and one that her friend does not want. Oh, I'm sorry. That does not want to be asked.
Okay. We'll definitely get to that one then.
We will. And watch the crowd murmur in disgust.
Okay.
But I'd like to get the ball rolling. Obviously, you're here because of the many voice actors that you've played. Was that something that you always wanted to do from the very beginning, or did it fall into that route?
A bit of both, actually. So my background was that I primarily performed in theater, like most actors do. And actually, when I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, I had what I like to call a little Tiffany epiphany. Trademark. It suddenly occurred to me that, wow, there are actual human actors who do the voices of these cartoon characters. Isn't that fascinating? So when I was about probably 9, I got this little Sony tape recorder, and I used to write sketches, and some of them, quite frankly, were not actually written, but I would sort of perform these different characters on my own or with my friends, whoever I could get roped into doing this with me, and that was sort of my first foray into voice acting, as it were, and that was about it for my whole voice acting career until 1994. A friend of mine called me that there was this company in Houston that was looking for some actors to dub a Japanese cartoon, a movie that was in Japanese, and they were going to do an English language version of it. And it was this new company in Houston called ADV Films, AD Vision. And so they'd only been around for a little while, and this was going to be the first show that they were dubbing into English, and they needed to find some actors. And so this friend of mine had heard about that, and he goes, well, I remember that you're an actor, so maybe you would be interested in that. And I said, sure, that sounds great. So I called, and I made an appointment. I went down there, and I auditioned, and it was just over 24 years ago. So somehow they let me keep doing it. So it was a little bit of like, I had an interest in that, but I didn't really know, like, how does one go about pursuing such a thing? And apparently you wait for your junior high boyfriend to call you and tell you they're having auditions. That's how you get into it. So.
And now you know, everybody, if you want to get into voice acting, keep in close contact with your exes.
Yes.
Yes. What type of cartoon shows inspired you when you were younger? Was there specific characters that stood out for you?
Oh, wow, that is a good question. I don't know if there was a particular one that necessarily inspired me to want to be a voice actor, but I really, just certain voices that would interest me, and I would try to mimic them, basically, or different accents that I thought were interesting. Not really any just particular cartoon that I thought, that's the one. If I could only do exactly that thing, there really wasn't one. It was just sort of in general.
Because from my experience of talking to voice actors, it's usually Warner Brother cartoons?
Yeah, there were a lot of Warner Brother cartoons that I watched as a child, for sure. A lot of Warner Brothers, but funny enough, like some of my favorite cartoons when I was a kid, I liked watching Popeye. I don't know that was really inspirational to me being a voice actor, but Speed Racer actually was one of my very favorite cartoons when I was a child. And of course, I had no idea that it was anime and that was Peter Fernandez, and I got to meet him later on. He was a really fantastic guy. So, oddly enough, one of my very favorite cartoons when I was little was actually anime, unbeknownst to me.
It is one of those very well, not now. The anime culture has really thrived, but when Speed Racer was out, nobody, as you said, nobody really connected that it was anime. It was just It was just a really, really fastly edited cartoon.
Yeah, it was just a really exciting cartoon that had interesting storylines. And there were race cars, and there's Trixie, and she was really cute, and Spritle and Chim Chim, and I don't even know how many people here have seen it, but it came on in Japan in the 60s, and then I think about 66, and it started showing in America probably around 1969. I was watching it like in the early 1970s, and it was actually one of my favorite. Another one of my favorite shows at that time was sort of a Sentai type show called Ultraman, which was also dubbed by Peter Fernandez, but it was another Japanese show. It's live action. But that was another one of my favorite shows.
The only reason that resonates so quickly is because I've recently read Ready Player One, and Ultraman, that character plays such a pivotal part in that story.
Okay.
If you haven't had a chance, it's a brilliant read.
Oh, cool.
So it's less of a panel and just more of a chit-chat.
Sure, absolutely.
And so when you went in for, so obviously the first anime that you voiced was for...
It was something called Guy Double Target, and it was phenomenally popular in the UK. It sold very, very well in the UK. This was actually, of course, back on VHS because DVD was not invented yet at that time. It did eventually come out on DVD maybe about 7 years ago. I'm not sure if it's available over here or not, but the DVD did finally come out. So that was the very first show that I dubbed back in February of 1994.
And can you remember anything about that particular audition?
Oh, yes.
Like what they were specifically...
Vividly, yes. I never done that type of audition before, so I had no idea what to expect at all. And we hadn't seen the show, so that was interesting. We had a part of the script that was, I had part of the script that was this sort of like the villain of the show, and I thought, oh yeah, that's the character I want to do. And of course it was 1994, and it was kind of just after the fall of the Soviet Union, so I decided that she would be Russian, and I remember I did the character with a Russian accent in my audition, and then he was like, yeah, that was good, but could you do it this time without a Russian accent? I mean, they are sort of in outer space and not in Russia, but he didn't say that, but that was true. And then there was the female lead in the show, a character called Raina, which is actually the character I ended up playing. And then the other thing that we did in the audition, which is just weird, but the director was a big fan of the Marx Brothers films, and so we read a scene from A Night at the Opera or A Day at the Races or one of those things. Yeah.
As the character, he made you read?
No, just like reading it. I don't remember specifically like what the lines were or anything, but yeah, that was, I guess, just like for comic timing. I don't know.
And
he had never done one of those auditions before, so he didn't really know how to do one of those auditions. So
you had never auditioned before, and he didn't know how to do the audition.
Well, I had never auditioned for like an anime. I had only auditioned for theater before. So.
Did you find that transition a little difficult? Because usually with theatrical auditions, you're allowed to use your body to...
You can use your body in voice acting, but no one can see it. Everybody does.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, everybody's using their body and doing all kinds of crazy physical things, but you just can't see it.
And did the one job, did it lead to a domino effect for...
Well, yeah, because the thing was, this was the first anime that was ever dubbed in Texas, which has sort of become in the U.S. It's like the sort of hub of anime production is first in Houston and then up in Dallas, and so we were sort of pioneers. We were the first people doing an anime in Texas, and So going into it, like, none of us had any experience doing this, and so then when they came around to dubbing the second show, I was like, well, I'm one of the most qualified people in the whole state because I did one. So then when they were doing the next one and the next one, I just sort of kept getting brought back in to audition or just have a part,
Yeah. And out of all the roles that you've played, was there any character that you either had difficulty to nail down right away, or a character that resonated a lot with you?
I would say, well, most of them probably resonated with me, and that's how I ended up doing the part. A couple of them were difficult in one way or another. Somebody earlier, I signed an image from a show called Noir, which came out about 2002, I think. And my character in the show was sort of like an evil puppet master in a way. Like, she was sort of pulling the strings of all these things that were going on behind the scenes. And so, really, she was a genuinely terrible person. But I couldn't play her as sort of like, whoa, she couldn't be like a Cruella de Vil sort of a character overtly. But so that was a challenge, because I wanted her to be like evil, but she was more like evil, So it was the sinisterness of the character, if that's a real word, and I don't know, but the sinisterness of the character was more in the fact that she was just so absolutely calm and composed about everything that she was doing, which involved like the murder of lots of people, a lot, but it was for a good reason.
And do you use those type of elements in the story to sort of help hone your character? Because I once heard an actor say that they never play an evil character, they're always doing good from their point of view. Right,
well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, no, she thought everything she was doing was completely justified, so, yeah.
But were you able to get access to that information to like sort of help your character?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I understood from her point of view, understood what her motives were and the things that she was trying to accomplish. But yeah, I mean, from her point of view, it wasn't evil.
We just have to watch the show and make her up a roommate.
I mean, the show is called Noir, so right off, it's not a happy show.
All black and white, cigarette smoke, trench coats.
Well, it's not like film noir, but the show is dark. It is dark.
Out of all the characters, is there a particular favourite that you have, one that you enjoy playing?
I've enjoyed most of them, honestly. It's so difficult. That's a question I get a lot, if there's like one particular. And I've voiced hundreds of characters. So it's very difficult for me to say just like this one or two that were, like, those were so great and the other ones were kind of, it's really fun. I mean, it's genuinely fun. Every time I go in the booth and I'm doing something, it's enjoyable.
You are literally living the dream of most people here.
Oh, well... I don't know if that's true or not.
I think you set yourself short. I am going to open it up, and I believe it was yourself that had a question. Yeah, hang on.
Yeah, all right. Oh, look at you, Johnny on the spot with the microphone and everything.
With the new rebuilt Evangelion series, did you find the role for Asuka very similar to the original series, or do you treat it like a completely different character?
That is tricky. With Asuka Shikinami versus Asuka Soryu, I mean, it's a reboot. So it's sort of, I mean, they are the same characters, but this is like an alternate reality. So I guess a bit of both. I mean, to me, it's still Asuka, and she is very familiar, but there are different things in her backstory, like... she's not really obsessed with Kaji anymore at all. It's like, oh, he's just, one of the teachers of the chaperones or whatever. And the element of her backstory as far as, like, growing up in Europe and being German and all of that, it's not really ever mentioned. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see how the whole thing comes to an end here eventually, whenever it does, but... a little bit of both. But to me, I mean, it's still Asuka. I still think it's Asuka.
And just a springboard from that that question. Last year I interviewed Jim Cummings about his voice work, and he says that when he was doing voice recording, he would get playbacks of the scenes so he could match up the timing with what he was saying to the animation. Is it the same sort of process for yourself when you're providing voices?
Well, yeah. So most of the work that I've done, it's dubbing, it's ADR recording, it's additional dialogue to something that already exists, whether it's animated or live action. So yeah, we are watching it as we're recording to get that timing, and also, you know, you see what the character's facial expressions are and how the scene is playing out and everything, and very much informs your performance when you're trying to match your acting performance to an existing picture that's already there.
And do you find that sometimes how do I phrase this properly, that the timing can be sometimes a little bit difficult because the original dub is usually very compact, and to try and fit the English dubbing on top of that?
The script is written for the show, so I mean, that's actually something I've done quite a bit myself as well. So it's not just some translation that a translator is randomly prepared that's like, this is what everything means. That's what you get in the subtitles. So for the dub, someone has to actually take that translation and adapt that into something that's going to fit into the actual mouth movements, because sometimes the translation can be way too short, sometimes the translation's way too long, sometimes it can be a little bit awkward or not really suit the character, so you have to take all that into account. So hopefully if you're working with a well done script, then it makes it a lot easier for the actors going in.
Always good to know.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions from anybody? Do you want to ask your question?
She already answered it earlier.
Oh, apparently I've already answered his question earlier, so now you'll never know.
Oh,
you've got a different question. Wow, look at that, coming with 2 questions.
Yes.
Impressive.
Hey, what has been your favourite ever voice acting experience?
Ooh, experience. Now there's a good question. Wow. See, I don't think I've ever had that question before. Experience. Yes, good for you. It's really rather difficult to think of in those terms. I don't know if there's one that stands out. I'll tell you though, if I get asked to do a character and I go in and it's something that's kind of a different thing, something that I haven't done before, that is very exciting, because there's part of me that thinks I can't do this, but then also I have to think, well, they've hired me to do it, so I guess I'm just going to have to do it, you know. For example, there was Azumanga Daioh, I think it was around 2003, 2004 when we did that show. And I mean, I did audition for the character, so I already had done the voice, but it was very, very different to something that I'd normally done. And Altena, actually, in Noir, was a really different sort of character. So I guess, you know, as far as a favorite experience, maybe just kind of the satisfaction of doing something that's really quite different and then thinking, oh, I guess I can do that. So that's, like, good for you. Good for you, Tiff. Good job.
Is there any parts that you've played that you found physically or mentally draining?
Oh yeah, there was, and I imagine no one's here has even seen it, but Ponyo Digi-Carrot. Anybody familiar with Digi-Carrot at all? Yes, Monica. Yeah, so we did this show that's about 14 years ago, and luckily the episodes were very short. So the episodes themselves were only, I think, about 5 minutes long or something like that. And so there's Princess Digi-Co is the main character of the show, and she has this sort of chaperone, I guess, and he's kind of like this anthropomorphic balloon, and that was me. And the character was called Gemma. And Gemma had this very sort of high, really scratchy voice that was really, really uncomfortable to do for longer than about an hour. So I was really glad when we were done doing that show, because it was really a taxing voice on me physically to do, and I'm not sure why I ended up doing that, but it was a job.
So was it more sort of like an impact in the back of the throat?
Yeah, I guess so. I was just drinking tons of like chamomile tea and things like that while I was doing the part. It was very difficult.
I'm not going to ask you to do it.
No, thank you.
I won't.
It was a little Yoda-esque, I guess, something sort of like that. But it was, yeah.
That's so random that out of the 2 panels that I've done today, you're the second person to mention Yoda.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't like what I was going for at all, but just thinking back on it, it was a little bit Yoda-esque. Thank you, Frank Oz.
Any other questions from anybody? Oh, yes.
Huh?
Just all in the front row on this side.
Was there any auditions that you really just didn't enjoy doing?
Any auditions that I didn't enjoy doing?
Spill the dirt. It's not all glamour.
I don't know. I mean, in the old days, that we used to actually like go into the studio and audition, and nowadays it's just pretty much me at my computer at home doing it, which is much better, I think. In some ways, although really, like, to be there in front of the director and getting direction, there's definitely a lot of merit in that as well. I don't know if there was an audition that I particularly didn't like doing. I can remember sometimes, though, going in and doing an audition, and where I've got brought in originally to audition for these 1 or 2 roles, and then I'll say, well, how about, I'd really like to read for that character there, and which has a couple times ended up in me getting that character there, so, you know.
So when you go for an audition, you're going in for a specific character, but can you suggest to read other characters? Occasionally.
Sometimes it really depends on who's running the audition and what the format is. And a lot of times, I mean, I don't really even know that much about the show to ask, so it's maybe just me seeing the character there. And I know something that I did at Funimation a few times was they would have, you'd go in for the audition and then sort of have these books out front that would have like a picture of the character, and then sort of a little bio on the character, and then maybe 5 or 6 lines of dialogue, which was going to be the audition. And you could flip through these books and pick like 3 or 4 that you were going to read for, but they didn't, maybe if there were like 8 or 10, they didn't want you to go in there and read all of them. But so in that way, sort of got to choose which ones. But I do remember an audition that I did for Funimation where it was like I was doing it at home and emailing the auditions, and I probably did about 6 different ones. And there was one that I thought, I'm probably not going to get this character, but I'll read for it anyway. And that was actually the character that I got. So sometimes the director hears a different thing that you didn't think was there, I guess.
Has there ever been a show or a character that you got where you did something where the director was like, that's not what I had in mind for that, but I like what you did? Is there any show that you've done?
Well, yeah, I've had a couple of jobs like that. Actually, even recently, and I'm not even thinking about anime, there was a video game that I worked on last year, but I'm not sure how much of that's been announced, so I'm not going to say what it was, but I did the audition, and when I went in for the part, and I asked the engineer, because it was an audition that I did at home, and I asked him, I was like, would you play back my audition for me, because I don't really remember what I did, and he did that, and we were sort of like on a phone patch thing, and so I was hearing the director, in my headphones, who was not actually there. It was like sort of a voice in my head, and yeah, he said that he was going to go something with the character, but then he heard my audition, and so he went a completely different way. And I did a training film a couple of weeks ago. It was like actually an on-camera audition. And it was the same thing, where the director said, well, first of all, in the script, the character was called Ben. And he ended up being Bernice. So, yeah, so very much a very different. In the script, he was described as having sort of this all-white suit and a red bow tie and a beard. And I did not have a beard.
Just shave the beard, keep the bow tie.
That's right.
It's fine.
Yeah, I shaved my beard for the part. Yeah. So sometimes, yeah.
So
Sometimes
you branched into video game voice acting.
I've done a few video games, not a lot. I think I've done 3 so far. So
And,
3. Keep your fingers crossed. It pays so much better than anime.
And for video game acting, I'm assuming.
And I'm not seeing anything for that. So it's just me performing, and I'm not having to match anything because it hasn't been drawn yet.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. It's amazing.
Well, that literally answered my question before I even asked it.
Yeah. That's at least that's been my experience on the 3 video games that I've worked on. Is you'll do several different takes of a particular line, and also for video games you have to do all those sort of like, I mean, we have to do that in anime too, but in anime you're watching them like having a fight or whatever, and so you're putting in all of those incidental sounds, you're putting all that in, sort of matching it to what's going on. But in the video game, it's like you haven't done it yet. And I do remember this one game that I worked on, Deus Ex 2, Invisible War. And sort of on the script it said like, scream, 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 scream. And so the director would say, you've been shot. You're being impaled. You were set on fire. You were stabbed. Someone shot you, you know. It's like, but it just on the script it was like scream, scream, scream. And then there were like other sounds. It was like, you just shot someone, you've impaled them, you've set them on fire. So you know.
So you were going back through your Stanislavski technique.
Yes.
What would it be like if my character was on fire?
Yeah.
How would that sound?
Exactly. You know.
Any other? Yes. Bro.
Serena.
How do you feel when you see people just as the characters you voice acted as?
Wow, I couldn't even understand. How do I feel?
What does it feel like when you see people dressed as the characters?
Dressed as it's super exciting. Yeah, it happens a lot. Obviously, I did not do Sailor Moon. That was dubbed in Toronto. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. I've been doing conventions now for over 20 years, so I've seen a lot of people dressed as a lot of characters that I played, including today. So today was no different. It's really cool. It is. I mean, it's a little different, like when you're a voice actor, because they're not actually dressed up as me. They're dressed up as a character that did the voice. So it's not as if like I were, I don't know, like I was going to say Carrie Fisher, may she rest in peace, but I don't know, like Mark Hamill, and you know he sees 1,000 people dressed as Luke Skywalker. Yeah. So, not exactly the same because they're not dressed as me, but it is pretty cool. I've taken loads and loads of pictures with these people over the years.
Cosplay has really kind of exploded over the past few years, and as you can see from clear evidence that there's a huge market for it. Is it something? What was it like for the first time you saw somebody dressed as a character that you voiced? Was it? Did it? Yeah, well, it was pretty exciting the first time you see someone dressed as a character that you played. Obviously, then you realize like that you sort of made a connection with that person. I actually back in the late '90s and the early 2000s, I used to dress up at conventions. I used to cosplay as a couple of my characters, but I'm afraid I can just not be bothered now. It's too much work. So this is my cosplay. And it suits you. It works well.
There we go.
I mean, how long did it take for your cosplay?
I scrubbed it 3 times and then stopped working on it again last night.
You're absolutely right. It is too much effort, too much work. You may look awesome, but ain't nobody got time for that. To bring back a meme from 2009. We are going to have to wrap this up soon, folks. We do have time for a few more questions, if anybody would like that. Oh,
over here.
One in the corner.
In the past 20 years in your convention, do you have any funny stories doing your conventions?
Oh my goodness, conventions in the last 20 years, stories.
Try and keep it chill.
Well, yeah. I've done about 260 conventions now. I don't know. I mean, for the most part, it's really, really good. Thankfully, there have not been very many awful things that have happened. There is a panel that I do sometimes at conventions, like a late night panel, Tales of Con Horror. Okay, we won't do that right now. Gosh, it's so hard for me to think of like one really short story I could tell you quickly. I don't know. Okay, here's one. So I was at a convention a few years ago in Portland, Oregon, which is sort of in the northwest part of America. And this woman came up, and I was sitting at a table signing things, and she came up and she said something like, yeah, I just wanted to come by and say hello to you. I'm a friend of Naomi's. And I said, Naomi who? And she goes, your sister. And I was like, it's not like, I mean, I know that I have a sister called Naomi, so I'm not that stupid, but it just was really out of context that she says, I'm a friend of Naomi's, and I went and said Naomi, and she goes, your sister? It's like, I think she might have thought I had a stroke or something. You know, it's just very, very out of context at an anime convention that she was mentioning my sister. Now, you have to understand that my sister used to live in Seattle, which is just sort of about 2 hours north of Portland, but I wasn't putting all of that together in my mind at the time, so that was a little unusual. So I've met other people at conventions too who have also met others of my sisters. So what I say is be careful, because one of my sisters may be lurking around somewhere near you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Uh-huh.
And with that, we are going to have to wrap up this panel, folks, but please, can I get a huge round of applause?
Thank you, and I will be back there, banished to the corner after this. Thanks.
So if you didn't get a chance to ask your question now, feel free to go over. I asked this, would you like, are you a hugger?
I could give a hug. I could give a hug.
I did this in my last panel. If anybody would like a hug, you have to buy an autograph first. It's autograph and then hug. That's how it works.
That is the correct order.
Yeah, it's the only order to have it. The next panel that's coming up, I do apologise, is the... I really hope I'm pronouncing this right, is the Fursuit panel. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then after that will be Greg Berg will be on the stage. I'll be interviewing him then. Later on today is the cosplay competition. Now, unfortunately, we have filled up all of our spaces, but I will be trying my hardest to try and get everybody involved. If your name is not on the list, stick around for the cosplay competition. I will try my hardest to get everybody up on stage that wants to help out with that. But for now, folks, go enjoy the rest of your convention. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just you. Thank you.